Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. First is roll call. Staff?
I've noted attendance.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes to regular Planning Commission meeting of October 22nd.
So moved. Second.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any discussions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries. Thank you. Okay, this is an opportunity for the citizens to address the commission on items not on the agenda. Anyone interested in bringing up anything? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the public hearings. Item number one is 811-813 66th Street, Cinco de Mayo. Consider a request for a conditional use permit to allow seating to be added to an existing takeout-only restaurant. Staff.
Thank you. The city has received an application requesting a conditional use permit for a traditional restaurant at 811 66th Street. This type of restaurant would allow seating and food and non-intoxicating beverage service. The location is currently occupied by Cinco de Mayo and the takeout-only restaurant. Traditional restaurants with seating but no alcohol service are conditionally permitted in this district. The existing site is non-conforming in regard to a number of items, including building and parking setbacks, parking lot design and dimensions, impervious surface, etc. Most of these items cannot be corrected without complete redevelopment of the site. In these instances, landscaping and screening plans that meet the intent of the ordinance can be approved. While there's virtually no impervious surface or landscaping on this site, staff recommends that a landscaping plan including a minimum of 6 planters along the front of the building and parking lot screening be approved. It might be a little bit difficult to tell on this site plan, but the property line is essentially the curb of the parking lot. There is a large boulevard in front of that property. The proposal includes the addition of a bike rack, which is required. In evaluating a request for a conditional use permit, the Planning Commission and Council must consider its compliance with the 8 criteria found in the code. Those are further discussed in one of the attachments to your report. In terms of critical issues, at the time of application, there were a number of violations at the property. The applicant has been made aware of the following violations. All parking is required by code and cannot be used for other purposes, like the donation box that was out there, but I noticed that has been removed. Pennants and flags, such as those along the front of the building, I believe those have also been removed, are not permitted by the sign code. Electronic window signs may not flash. Portable signs, including sandwich board signs, are prohibited. And tables and chairs are not permitted in the restaurant until the conditional use permit is approved and the conditions are met. All properties within 350 feet of this property have been notified. Staff did not receive any comments. And it was also published in the Sun Current. The City Council will make a final decision on this application on December 11th.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
Mr. Chair, I don't know what the proper time would be to bring this up, but item number 4 talks about parking lot design and standards. That was intended to be on the agenda tonight, but is not going to be. My question as it relates to item 1 is that we have parking considerations in this motion, and I'm wondering whether or not the staff is still considering changes to the parking regulations, and if so, what, and would they possibly affect this project?
Commissioner, members of the commission. The changes that we are considering, have been discussing at a staff level, are related to the dimensions of the actual stalls and the aisles. So in a case where there's an existing parking lot, this most likely would not be affected. It would mostly affect new development throughout the community, or if a parking lot were going to be completely redesigned.
Thank you.
Is there a member here that would like to discuss this at all or talk about it to the staff? Okay. If you'd state your name and address.
My name is Patricia Ryman, R-E-I-M-A-N, and I live at 8220 Harrison Road in Bloomington, Minnesota.
Nancy Greenman, Griemann, 7220 Park Avenue. We are co-own the building that currently houses, or they're trying to make the improvements on. So we are representing the building owners.
We have no problem with any of the issues that are discussed, except for one, and that is the screening issue. And we have a big problem with that. In 1998, we built that building next to it, and at that point, we came to the city and we had a landscaping plan approved. And what it is, a series of maple trees, mature maple trees along the boulevard. And this plan now discusses putting a screening of bushes and or grasses and or a fence. And so I had one bid done, and in order to put a screening in, you actually have to take a chainsaw and cut out all the mature maple roots that are appearing right underneath the grassy area. And he gave me a bid of, and I do have a copy with me, of $6,700. And it's Southview Design. Should I put it on here so you guys, did you want to see it? Do I have to turn another way?
Sorry, they'll do it for you. Yep.
So it's $950 to do the bed prep. We have to strip out all the sod and dispose. Then another $950 to get rid of all the mature maple roots underneath. And then he put,
Yeah.
I'm
just more
sorry.
than me.
Okay, good, thank you. And then $180 for edging, and then the various types of landscaping materials, hauling and pulverized dirt, preem, and mulch. The total comes to $6,775.78. We did, I did contact him, and he gave two other options. A red flame miscanthus, and that would be a total of $1,544.21 for materials, or a shrub of a dogwood would be $3,000 in materials. That would be another option instead of the ones, but he would still have to do all the prep work. And in his opinion, he also wrote a letter. In summary of the letter, he doesn't actually recommend doing the work. After assessing the existing landscaping and receiving information from you, he would say in his professional opinion that any construction of a fence, woody structure would cause detrimental damage to existing trees as well as irrigation. We do have a full irrigation system out front. A mass planting or hedge to provide coverage throughout the year would cause damage to the trees as well. He also said this would also require routine maintenance schedule to clean the planting of the weeds, debris, trash, etc., and it would increase our monthly maintenance cost to around $450. Another thing, that there is snow plows that do plow the sidewalk, and would be a whole nother area of damage to the bushes, so I would have to trim half of them down and have them regrow every year. I also looked on the internet to see what kind of damage. I just Googled bushes underneath maple trees. And it said trees vary in their ability to tolerate damage. Among the most sensitive are red oak, white oak, and sugar maple. younger trees are able to withstand the changes of construction better than larger mature trees. And these are 42 inches in diameter. We actually had them all hand spayed in. So they're nice, beautiful, beautiful color. And when I asked him if he did all this work, and I said, can you guarantee the life of the tree? And he said no. And it takes 3 to 4 years for the damage to occur, where you would have loss of leaves starting from the top and then on the sides. I also went through and the property is actually 2 separate properties. We have our flower shop on one and the convenience stores on the other. So this is only one side of the property. So as you drive down the street, you will see one side with the bushes on, and the other side would remain blank because we're not doing any improvements, so it would just be his side. Another thing that when I measured from the actual center of the tree to the sidewalk is only 6 feet and then when you have a 3-foot wide bush, you're just not going to have very many roots. So I'm not quite sure how we're going to mow. You know, the place gets littered all the time with pop bottles and cigarette butts and all that kind of stuff. Now it works perfect. We have a sprinkler system, we have a lawn care service, and we have a fertilization program. All of a sudden we have a bunch of bushes along this. I don't know. It's just going to end up to be a total weed situation, and that I don't really have the time or interest to be out there constantly weeding on the boulevard. Last year we did replace the sod between the sidewalk and the street, and actually one of the workers was hit by a car working on it. It's a dangerous area, and we're more than happy to do landscaping. In fact, we were in the business for over 45 years. But to me, this just does not make sense. I would be more than happy to do it if it made sense, but it doesn't. It just is going to be more headache. And also, we do have the 4th of July situation where we have families that go there every year. They sit in their same spots. And all of a sudden, now there's bushes. I just don't want to take the complaints. And they're not going to be able to see the parade this year. This is where we sit every year. This is where we meet our friends. And now all of a sudden we have all these bushes sitting there. So, did you have anything else to say?
Well, I think what we're looking at is we've been a long-time business in Richfield, and we can plan on continue to stay in Richfield, and we feel that we've been an asset to the east side of Richfield. And we're looking at a tenant who wants to improve a building and improve a situation and add another business to that side of Richfield, which I think is a positive thing. And all he wants to do is put a few tables in, and for us and himself to incur the expenses of the additional things that we need to do. It would put a hardship for him and for us as building owners. And so I guess we're looking for perhaps for you to see a way to see that the trees make more sense, and to add the bushes in between the trees would unbalance the property, first of all, could possibly kill mature trees that we, at the time we put them in, spent probably, I think the requirement was like a tiny little sapling, and we spaded in full-size trees because we wanted the look of a nice tree boulevard. We didn't want the look of bushes in between the trees, or we would have done it at that time. So I guess we're hoping to have your consideration in this matter. We have a great tenant. We don't want to lose our tenant. It's a great asset to the community, and it seems that he's been doing a lot of things to the building and additions and things in compliance with the city. And I think this is just the last step for him to start being successful in that location. So that's what we're hoping for. So
I also just, I took a picture, and you can see the mature trees, and I actually put pots to show you what position the bushes would be in. And you can see if you're there isn't a whole lot of space in there. And those pots are only 24 inches. Bushes get to 36. And you can see anybody walking by or riding a bike, or if they fell off a bike, they'd fall into the bushes, all kinds of different things. So, but that's kind of a picture I took of the area it would be.
Okay, thank you. Maureen, did you have a question?
Yes, it's more of a comment and to staff. I mean, when we talk about reports from our liaison commissions, I was going to bring up the fact that 66th Street from Xerxes to 16th Avenue will be redone starting in 2016. Now, as I look at your picture and I think about, what's going to be the end design of 66th Street in that area, I don't think it's very appropriate to really do much changes now, because it totally could be changed when they redo 66th Street in, 4 years?
Okay, thank you. Staff, did you want to address any of these items? I'm curious as to, for my own benefit, what might have been the idea that you might have had relative to what could have happened there.
Well, the code requires that parking lots be screened. And so there is an exceptionally wide boulevard in this area, much wider than you will see anywhere else along 66th Street. The code allows for you to deviate from landscape standards when the standards can't be met. So staff's responsibility then is to enforce the rules of the code. And the code says that you need parking lot screening. Now, if you decide that because of other factors that it's appropriate to have an alternative plan, then that's a policy decision. That isn't a staff decision. Staff is to recommend what the code and what the rules of the city say.
Okay. And had you considered the fact that 66 was going to be redone and that maybe it isn't the appropriate time to do that?
We hadn't specifically considered it, although the Public Works Department did review the plan and thought that it would be fine to put a boulevard permit in here. I think that the thought behind that is that with this wide boulevard here and a much narrower right-of-way throughout 66th Street, this area will not be widened.
Okay, other questions of the applicants? Tom?
Did Brian Link take a look at this area?
Chris Link?
Brian Link, the city forester?
Jason Morrison?
No, Brian Link.
I am not aware of a Brian Link.
He's mentioned the city forester. Who's
The city forester. The city forester is included as part of the Public Works review. I don't know that he didn't provide any comments, and I didn't specifically ask him.
All right.
Any.
I find it odd that we would go ahead and require somebody to take down mature maple trees right now. I mean, it's kind of a gamble when those trees are planted, whether or not they're going to survive. And if these have survived to maturity,
They've been there 14 years.
it's unusual, for that to happen, especially in a boulevard area or area like that where you've got salt and sand and whatever tossed up during the winter. I've driven by there a number of times. I went by there, this week specifically to look at this. I didn't realize that you had an objection to this, but I did look at the area. I can understand why you would. I would think that we ought to be able to find some type of a compromise to this in screening, if it really absolutely has to be. It hasn't been screened beforehand. That parking lot has been there for a long time. I would think that we ought to be able to work with a long-standing business owner and resolve the issue in some way that it at least makes an attempt to meet the code and at the same time doesn't require the removal of mature trees.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna
As a
just,
point of clarification, Chair Jebs, staff did not request that the trees be removed. Staff requested that parking lot screening
Oh,
be
I
installed
wasn't-
in addition.
Yeah, I
That
didn't mean to
was-
imply that you
okay,
did.
Okay,
Just the situation, I guess, requires it. As you said, meeting the code and so on.
any other questions of the applicant?
Well, to clarify, I think you stated that a hedge planting could potentially risk those trees, not that those trees would be removed.
Right,
And
that's,
the objective of the code could be met through a screening fence. There were a number of options listed that were available for screening. The option that you selected to have bid was a hedge, not a small fence or some of the other options that were listed.
that would, a small fence would do the same kind of damage, if not worse, because all the roots are right underneath the surface, so you would have to take a chainsaw, literally, and saw them to dig down. And if you do a fence, you've got to do for freezing and thawing, you've probably got to go 48 inches. Would do so damage. I have articles on you can do damage. I just Googled any kind of planting or fencing underneath maple trees, and they don't recommend it. They said maybe hostas, but you know, you're going to do damage. There's 3 full-size trees there, 42 inches in diameter. It'd be about this big. They're beautiful. They turn yellow. I mean, you know, they've been there since we built the building in '98, and then the parking lot and everything's been there since '68. And it's worked out great for me. We've had other landscaping before, and it just turned into a weed bed. It's just, you know, all the stuff blowing and everything. It's just almost impossible to keep up with. And this has just been just a fantastic situation for us as far as upkeep, and it's just worked out great.
Did you have a comment?
I did. Staff was just discussing, and we thought maybe a good compromise would be, rather than digging under, to berm up a little bit right behind the curb, and that would allow some planting room. They're planting, I'm not sure that you could berm up enough to put in a fence. It would depend on what kind of fence and things like that. But if you added soil, you potentially would not have to go into those roots, and you would still be able to provide some screening for that parking lot.
Well, one other thing I was thinking of is that I remember on the little garden tours during the summer type deal, that there is one of the people that participates in that, and they use a thing called lasagna planting, I think is what it's called. And basically what it does is you basically do build up the area per se with newspaper and dirt, and you're able then to put in some types of plants where you don't have to dig down so far into the soil. An interesting concept that might want to be looked at as a possibility if in fact this goes the way that it does. But it was real interesting to see their backyard, because basically what they had done is built up so high and basically put in some types of plants that then you could make look pretty decent. And they were all in between trees. I mean, the whole backyard was trees plus all that.
But you guys have to realize how small an area this is. The trees cover, I would say it's a 4-foot diameter area. So then you might, on the front side, you have maybe 6 feet. And on the back side, I didn't measure that. What do you think that is, Fernando? Maybe 2 to 3 feet. And by doing a berm, you can only do so high and sculpture all of this. And all of a sudden, where do I put the snow? When we do the parking lot, the snow all goes there. So all of a sudden, you're talking Fernando's business, you're going to have a snow pile of about 8 feet on top of a berm, and all of a sudden, he might as well shut down, because you're not even going to be able to see him. But we have to put the snow somewhere, and the snow goes right along that front. And depending on the year, of course, it could be 6 feet, and if you have a berm 3 feet, you're talking 9 feet. I don't know. It's gonna, and then you've got a berm on one side, and then you've got completely flat on our side, the other half of the area. I don't know. You know.
I think
Okay, other comments, Maureen?
Well, another thing is I'm very familiar with the 4th of July parade and whatnot. I mean, you can put all that landscaping in you want, but I can almost guarantee that on the 4th of July, that's going to be ignored, and it's going to be stepped on and sat upon, and chairs are going to go in it. I'm sorry, but I think it's going to spend a lot of money for nothing.
Okay, other comments? If not, let's, is there any, we should move this to a public hearing, get the public hearing done and then have more discussion.
Yes.
Okay. So this is a public hearing. If there's anyone who wishes to come forward to talk about this subject, this is your opportunity. Okay, seeing none, I guess we'll ask for a motion to close.
Move to close the public hearing.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so then we can continue on our discussion as such. More comments, ideas? Bob?
Could you put that picture back up again for a moment, please?
I have other pictures in my camera.
Also, is there a sign-in sheet over there?
Yeah.
Okay, Fernando, would you sign in, please? Thank you.
Well, I'm inclined to agree with Ms. Scaglia that this is not something that we should require them to be doing. I would be in favor of making an exception for this requirement in the motion. I don't see, I mean, 98 is when you built your building and we're already requiring a change 12 years later. I just don't think that's reasonable to start with, but I see the problems that you're talking about. I see the costs that you're talking about. I see the practical side, the complications it would cause, and I think we ought to provide an exception in this case. One of the things that, and I'll so move when the time comes, one of the things that concerns me more, however, is the discussion about the legal description. Have we come close to resolving the question as to whether or not we have the legal description of the property for, that the staff, I presume you've made them aware of the problem with regard to the legal description?
There, in the report, it states that you haven't submitted a legal description with your application. And so staff made an attempt to pull a legal description from Hennepin County. But if that isn't correct, you will not be able to record your conditional use permit. And you're responsible for making sure that that is correct. Staff doesn't have a way to do that.
All right, I'm a little bit unfamiliar with what the process is to actually.
Talk to
Oh, here, Fernando.
I'm a little unfamiliar with what it would be to file a legal description, but I mean, something that is needed, I can certainly do it as soon as possible.
And I'm assuming these ladies would have a legal description of their property, and they would be able to give that to you, and then you could provide it to staff, and we could make sure that it's correct in the resolution. But as of now, as the report said, we don't have one. It wasn't submitted with your application.
Okay.
And that's one of the things that was listed in that administrative review report, that we didn't have that.
Okay, and did we resolve the issue as far as the 4 versus 10 for the chairs and tables? Or is 4 the number?
Yeah, it's, no, it's 10 tables. We switched it because originally I wanted to do just a little seating area for people waiting, but I assumed that since I was gonna pay the $9,000 or the, every unit for sewer and water charges was gonna be a little bit over $2,000, so I figured I might as well pay for a reasonable amount where people actually would be invited to sit down. So I applied to the Met Council for 10 tables, 28 chairs, I believe.
Okay. And does this fire code, is that acceptable number in that building, or where are we at as far as that piece?
Fire has reviewed the plans. They didn't make any comments that it wasn't.
So 10 was okay?
They reviewed the floor plans,
Okay,
so yes,
okay.
I would assume so.
Other comments, questions? Bob?
Well, seating was one of the issues. The second item that you have there with regard to the seating being based on square footage rather than tables, what
Par-
then?
Parking is based on,
Parking, that's what I meant.
that's
yeah.
correct.
I'm sorry. But then what is the permissible amount based on on that square footage? Is that 26? I drew the 26 from the actual motion where it says, in item number 3, all 26 parking stalls must be accessible all year round. Is that the required number that they need for their square footage?
Yes.
Okay, and that's adequate for 10 tables?
Our, like it says, our parking standards are based on square footage. It doesn't matter how many tables.
Well,
The people
the
put in.
tables don't come into play at all?
They do not. And the reason for that is that someone could come in and apply for a permit to allow 4 tables, get approved, and then very easily put in 16 tables. And staff really wouldn't have any way of knowing that. So instead, we base our calculations on square footage, which is much more stable.
Okay, so they have adequate parking for the square footage?
There's adequate parking for the
Okay.
restaurant and market, yes.
Okay, that's what my question was, that I made hard work out of. Thank you.
Then as far as the other condition that they have, as far as the landscaping, the 6 planters along the front of the building?
Yeah, I went and bought 10 planters and put some, seasonal plants on it that are gonna die, and I know I'm aware that I'm gonna have to maintain them on a seasonal basis. So I got that taken care of, as well as the removing the Salvation Army box
Yeah.
that was removed a week and a half ago.
Okay,
And the planters have been located in front of the building for about 2 feet away from the wall. My only concern is the fire hazard that comes with it, because there's a lot of people walking by smoking and always burning their cigarettes off in there. So I guess I'll just have to deal with it when times comes.
As far as this screening, what's the actual density or opacity of the screening? What's required to screen the parking lot?
It's parking lot screening is required to a height of 3 to 4 feet. It doesn't specify the opacity.
Okay, so if we were to have something that were along the lines of, I'm not spending your money here, I'm just suggesting, like a wrought iron type of fencing that may not require as much root digging and so on, goes up a little higher so nobody's impaled, but it adds some decorative nature to it and some screening. Is that kind of a compromise that,
A wrought iron fence is one of the suggestions that staff
okay.
had made, yeah.
So would something like that be amenable?
Do you know how much a wrought iron fence costs? That would be, we're talking probably $20,000. I know our screening in the back of the lot that we did a privacy fence in '98 was $15,000. So I can't imagine this front. And plus, there are so many kids on bicycles and kids and strollers and all that kind of stuff. I just don't know how that would work.
Okay.
That would be a cost issue.
All right.
6,000 is bad enough, but 20,000, I
Okay.
don't know.
What could you live with as far as cost?
Well, I think too, it just aesthetically, if you saw, it is, half of our property would have a fence and then it would stop and the other half wouldn't. I just think if the idea is I'm not sure what the idea of the screening is. I can see if we had no trees or nothing there and had it was all blacktop.
Okay.
And so I get that, but if it's to make it aesthetically more pleasing, it just, to me, would make it totally off balance for the whole property. To
Okay.
do something in one half and then obviously leave the other plain.
Sure, and that makes sense.
And I just think of people, again, the 4th of July thing, trying to walk through that fencing. They'd be climbing that fencing. It would be a real as if anybody's ever been, to that part of the city on the 4th of July for the fireworks. I just can't imagine that it would be an asset. if the point is to make it look better, I can't understand why that would make it look better.
Okay.
And also, I'm not sure how that when the city plows that sidewalk, where would they plow their snow to? Right now, they can plow it, you know, willy-nilly wherever they want to. If we start putting a screen in there, they're blocking how they can snow plow too.
Yeah.
And I would think that would be a hazard to citizens trying to walk down that sidewalk and
Yeah,
have
I was
it be
thinking of
cleared.
putting whatever screening would be on the parking lot side of the trees, so the snow plowing wouldn't.
But then we'd have the problem, where would we put our snow,
So,
you know? So,
And then and if we start having our snow plow driver pile snow on a fence, it'll be ruined in a year or two. Because
okay.
we replace sprinkler heads every year, and the sprinkler heads are right along there. And I just know when they start with the pickups and they start, you know, clearing the parking lot in 10 minutes, it'll just be a big hassle.
Besides the planted trees or bushes, is there any other suggestions that staff has that can probably or could possibly work this out?
Our other ideas for screening were the berming idea and possibly planters right along the back of the curb. You know, the intent of the code is to block that view of the parked cars and the parking lot in front of the businesses.
But there, that parking lot in front of what would be the restaurant area is contiguous with the parking lot further down. She does make a point that if you're only doing half of it, it does seem nonsensical.
And that's certainly something that you can consider. On the other hand, there are properties all along Penn Avenue that are essentially contiguous. And as those properties turn over, we make one property owner do it, even though the next property may not look as nice. It's a policy decision, though. The issue is that you can approve an alternative landscaping plan if you think it meets the intent of the code or there are special circumstances.
Did you look at all at the berm situation?
Actually, I have berms in my backyard all over.
No, I didn't,
Oh.
at that curb site. Did you look at that?
Yes, I thought of that, and we talked with the landscaper, but there's not enough room to make a berm look decent. You have to have so much rise and contouring, and there's not enough room in that area. Once you go on that property and see how little, you know, the trees take up a huge spot, it just would look silly. It, almost look like burial plots to me, if you don't have enough room to landscape it properly.
So I don't know, I'm still not convinced, okay? So, sorry.
Okay,
But,
that's all right.
I think it's some interesting things. I still think there's options here. And just creatively in my own mind, I'm thinking this through, and I'm thinking, well, if I had to do this, you know, maybe I'd look at possibility of some kind of a structure that wouldn't damage the roots, would still give you a capability to get the berm that you need as far as the 4 feet, and not necessarily have to put too many rods or pins. I mean, because you can put in like some decent-looking railroad ties per se, or something on that order. I'm just guessing out loud, but something on that order where you can put a rod through into the ground and still hold the structure in place and create a berm that might look very aesthetically decent with some neat plants in it, that type of thing, and not cost yourself $80,000 or $20,000, and still meet the objective of the plan and not upset the landscape all the way down the row. So I think there's some options here that probably haven't been explored, and I agree with you that I don't want to ruin the trees. On the other hand, you know, we're sitting here with a thing like we've done, as we suggested, Penn Avenue, et cetera, where we come and we make these plans up and everybody participates in the neighborhood and comes up with ideas and says, yeah, this is the way we want it to look. And then the first time we get an opportunity to advance it, and again, I'm not saying that I don't want the business to succeed. What I'm saying is that this has been something that's been thought about, and so there's got to be some constructive and imaginative ways that you can make this happen without destroying the trees and still creating the atmosphere, still giving yourself the opportunity to get your snow removed and the sidewalks plowed, et cetera, maybe even create a ledge there whereby the 4th of July people can sit on the ledge and watch the parade instead of having to climb up on the trees and whatever. So, I mean, it seems to me that still we haven't exhausted all possibilities here and that the plan can still be met in some degree.
Well, in 1997, before we completely redid the parking lot and did all our landscaping, we did have railroad ties. They were all over. We did have I wish we had a picture of it, but we did have landscaping areas all throughout the whole thing. And it turned into weed beds, and they ended up falling apart and people jumping on them, and it ended up to be a total, complete disaster.
But I'm sorry, you guys take great care of your property over there. I just went by it tonight. It looks great. And so, honestly, I don't think you're gonna let that happen. So if you let that happen, then you're doing a disservice to your own business.
Well,
So that doesn't make sense to me either.
it's just, we don't have the time or the money because I do it myself. My husband mows, who happens to be here, and I weed. And we just don't have the extra money to have a building maintenance person, to be honest with you. It's a struggling economic time, and, so I do it myself, and this has worked out super for us. I love my son is a graduate. He's a landscape architect. He's actually getting his master's. And I love landscaping. My yard is completely landscaped. It's not that we're against the landscaping. It's this type of landscaping is not going to work for our property. I would be more than happy to say I'd love to do all kinds of landscaping. Richfield Floral and Gardens, but we have not done the gardens because we wouldn't be able to maintain them. We're getting up in years, but it's just with the snow removal, this has worked just ideal, the situation we're in. And like we said, in '98, we spent all kinds of money getting plans on landscaping. We came to you guys and you said, yes, what should we do with this property? And we said, big, mature trees. And we spent $2,000 a piece to have them spayed in. And we thought this is our ideal situation and perfect. And it has worked out great. But I think once you start trying to change that, and the trees match the trees across the street in the park. So it looks like a continuation of the park. I wish there was a better solution, but I can't think of any. And I asked Southview, they have 18 crews of landscaping. And we tried to come up with what we could do different, and he couldn't either.
It's kind of interesting, because just in these couple of minutes, I've come up with a couple, and there are possibilities, okay? Josh?
I just had a question for staff. Is there a requirement, so I see the height requirement, the goal of is 3 to 4 feet. Is there a duration in which that height has to be hit? I'm thinking of grasses. It's going to take a few years for something to hit that height. It'll have some density and some time. It's a minimal impact as far as affecting the roots and whatnot. It could be done with a very, very minimal amount of berming. So is there do they have 2-3 years to get the plant to hit that height?
There isn't a requirement in the code. Typically, we have allowed shorter plants that will mature into the screen that's desired.
Thank you.
And I'll bring back my point one more time of this lasagna garden. It's still an option. If you check into it, you might find it works.
So, another option that occurs to me that could work in this space is an interstitial panel. So between the trees, having some sort of accent panel, whether it be steel, concrete. It's not a contiguous fence, but something like that where it would be a decorative accent panel to highlight the building and be of minimally likely to disrupt the trees, because it wouldn't have to span tree to tree. It wouldn't be a complete fence. You wouldn't have the ingress and egress issues that you have for 4th of July, and it would seem to the spirit of it, although I'm sensing that a portion of the objection is economic.
Other comments? Bob?
Isn't that parking lot below road grade already?
Yeah.
So,
It floods in the one corner all the time.
So it must be.
Yeah.
No, it's
Yeah.
below, it's not if we're comparing it to the Penn Avenue, I understand that, because most of the properties there is no landscaping, right? It's parking lot to sidewalk to, to nothing. So I understand the point of blockage, but in our case, It's like Pat said, it's an extension of the park across the way. It's the grassy, you drive down 66th Street, you've got nice trees along. You put these things up, and I just don't think it'd be economic aside. I think it just would look dumb. It would just look really, really dumb. And so I'm having a hard time picturing any sort of structure in between those trees. It just does not make sense to me.
How many, sir, how many planters did you say you had?
10.
10, and you're expected to have 6. And I would suspect, ladies, that if the 10 pots look pretty good in front of his place, that you might want to do that all along. So this could be a test for what you might do there instead of, I believe you want your place to look nice.
But Bob, those planters are up along the building. They wouldn't have anything to do with screening the parking lot.
I'm having a discussion with them, sir. Thank you.
And then I have a question. If, the only reason we have to do this as property owners is because he wants 10 tables. If we decide we don't want to do it, then he can't have his 10 tables, then we wouldn't have to do anything, right? So the reason we're doing all this landscaping so he can have 10 tables, that's, I don't get it, but, you know, we have to go through all this work, do $450 extra in maintenance a year so he can have 10 tables. And I'm more than happy for him to have 10 tables because I've tried to rent that place for all these years. I've had people for turn around 2 years, 3 years, can't make it. I finally get him to come along, and he is doing a fantastic job, and he's trying to get tables in here. And then all of a sudden I find out I'm gonna have to spend $6,000, $7,000 after, you know, having that building vacant for so many years and tenants moving in and out. And I tell people and they just don't even get it. I said, I don't get it either. And I don't even understand the screening. I thought we want people to see businesses. You know, what do you want to build a berm so we're behind all the snow banks and we're behind all these screening. I don't get screening. I'm business orientated. I want to see the businesses and I want to be able to drive by, and I think it looks great. I remember we put the trees in and people were so excited because this was, I think, after the whole fiasco in Veterans Park where they took a bunch of trees down. So I'm just trying to make a living, have a tenant, and be reasonable. And I think the screening is a little bit unreasonable for 10 tables. Because if you didn't put in the 10 tables, we wouldn't need the screening. We wouldn't all be here.
Well, it's unfortunate, but you do have a conditional use permit that comes into play. So when
Yeah.
that happens, so do these types of things called policies and procedures.
But
So it's unfortunate, but
it
it's
is
part of the
because we
deal.
were completely approved in '98. We went through this whole thing and spent all kinds of money. And we spent the back fences. We had to put in privacy fences. That was another $40,000. Then we put in the trees. That's another $20,000. After we spent $500,000 on the building and changed all the properties. And floral shops aren't exactly big money makers. We've been successful, but you know, it's just how much more can we do? We thought we were done in '98, but I guess not. So that's why we're here. That's why we're concerned. And I can't say more about Fernando as a tenant. He's absolutely been the best tenant we've ever had and has worked with us and is very hardworking. So I just hope that you guys really consider not, you know, somehow changing and maybe our property isn't the cookie cutter property that you need the screening that you're talking about. I think you have to look at each individual cases. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Okay, what's your wish?
I'll move to pass the resolution with the Is someone wanting to speak out there? I don't know who he is.
I'm sorry, I got in late, so that's why I didn't speak when I first came up, but I do have.
Yeah, I'm kind of sorry because we had the open already and we closed it, sorry.
Amended to delete the words "and parking lot screening brackets 3 to 4 feet in height" from item 3, bullet point 1. I move the resolution.
I'll second it.
So basically, you're calling for you're calling for this to be approved with that stipulation, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, discussion. So motion and a second has been made, so open discussion. Maureen?
I'm going to support the motion. If we had the design of 66th Street in front of us right today, I might be different, but I can really visualize the situation that we force these people to spend $6,000, and 4 years from now, something else has to be done. I really think that until we really see what 66th Street's going to look like, in terms of all the talk about complete streets and what we're going to do with boulevards and where we're putting sidewalks these days, I feel that tall, mature trees, I feel that irrigated grass is just as beautiful as bushes. And having cleaned up parks for the Cleanup Park program, I can guarantee on 66th Street, there'll be so much debris into those bushes that it'll be ridiculous. And then there's the 4th of July. So for all those reasons, I will support Mr. Hall's motion.
Others? Okay. Well, okay, my comment is this, is that I just don't think we've looked at all the possibilities. That's my problem. And I think there's a lot less for costly items that we could have done. I have an issue with the situation as far as what happens when the next applicant comes through and we say we're going to wait another 4 years before we do something. So from that perspective, I hear Maureen's arguments. I can see the rationale for it. I understand, and I want the business. That's not my problem here, is that all of a sudden, we start changing policy again based on recommendations that have been made, and we don't follow through with it to a degree where, it leaves the door open for the next one that's going to be a question that we have to deal with the same type of situation. So I'm going to have to vote no on this when I vote.
I'm going to support it, and I would agree with you. I don't think we've exhausted all the possibilities. I would like you to at least consider some other things. I like Commissioner Root's idea of using some plantings, the tall wheat grasses and so on that have been utilized in other spaces. I think we ought to be able to get a little creative with that. But as it's proposed here, I would agree with Mr. Hall to delete this as an undue hardship on the property owner. The other comment I have is that I will point out that right out of the gate, we immediately discounted certain design guidelines over on Penn Avenue. And nobody seemed to have a problem with what we did with, ended up dealing with CVS because they were a big business. And that was right out of the gate. So we've made a precedent a long time ago on that. Yes, I would like to be compliant with these things, but there just are sometimes situations where it doesn't make any sense to do some things, and this happens to be one of them. And I agree with Maureen. The guidelines for 66 have not been completely written yet. Who knows what will change? So I will support it with that condition removed as Mr. Hall proposed.
Okay, Other comments? Okay. Nope.
I would like the applicants to state whether or not they're comfortable with that change.
Does that mean we don't have to do it?
Correct.
Okay, yes. We would be very extremely excited, and thank you.
Okay, let's call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. Carries. Thank you very much, and good luck.
Mr. Chair, as a post comment, I do commend staff for trying to adhere to all code and try to find a solution to these things. In this case, it just, in my view, wasn't possible.
Well, that is our job.
Thank you. And thank you for doing it.
Okay, next, moving on to public hearing number 2. Deals with 6630, 6632 Penn Avenue. Consider a request for a site plan approval to allow an adult daycare serving up to 5 people. Staff?
Thank you. The owner of 6630 Penn Avenue has applied for a permit to operate an adult daycare. A change in use requires site plan approval. This 2-tenant building is currently used as an art gallery / gift shop and an acupuncture clinic. The proposed daycare would replace the acupuncture clinic. Daycare uses require 1 parking space per 5 enrolled persons. The proposed center will serve a maximum of 5. Parking provided behind the building and on the street will be adequate to serve both the new business and the existing art gallery / gift shop. Parking in the rear must be striped in accordance with the proposed plan, which is now up on your monitor. The existing building includes an awning, and the applicant has added planters, which will include live plants during spring, summer, and fall, and decor during the winter to the space in front of the building. And those changes generally meet the intent of the Penn Avenue design guidelines. There is not much opportunity to make other improvements along Penn Avenue. The existing building is legally non-conforming, and no external changes are proposed. There is an opportunity to add a limited amount of pervious surface behind the building. However, staff doesn't believe there would be any tangible benefit to that. In evaluating a site plan, Planning Commission and Council shall consider its compliance with the 7 criteria outlined in the code and highlighted in your attachment. Staff recommends approval based on compliance with all of the criteria. And again, notification of this hearing was published in the Sun Current and sent to properties within 350 feet. And the council will make a final decision on December 11th. That's staff's report.
Okay. Did the applicant wish to make any comments? No. Okay. Okay. Questions of staff?
Hours of operation.
The applicant would have to answer that question. I'm sorry, I don't know.
My name is Huan Gao. I'm the owner and applicant. So the hours of operation is from 9 to 4 during the day, Monday to Friday.
Okay.
Any other questions? Okay. Okay, this is a public hearing. This is your opportunity to address the commission if you have anything. Seeing none, I ask to close the public meeting. Okay, second? Second. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Discussion? Bob?
I'm concerned about the parking in particular. You have 2 businesses there, and one would require 5 persons parking, 5 parking places, 1 for each enrolled person in the program. What about the other half of the building? What are the requirements for that company to continue to operate?
Sure, maybe I wasn't clear on the parking requirement. The parking requirement for a daycare is 1 space per 5 enrolled, so the parking requirement for the daycare is 1 space. Because there will be a maximum of 5 people served at this location.
I totally misread that.
Mr. Chair? Do any of the parking spaces in that area have to be handicap designated?
The building inspector reviewed these plans. I'm not sure, I don't have the administrative review committee report with me, and so I'm not sure what that requirement is there. The building inspector does review this and would have to issue the certificate of occupancy, and so if a handicap space is required, they won't get their certificate until that's
Okay, currently I don't
installed.
believe there is one along the front of it. I did not check the back, but I'm assuming that the persons to be served at this location would be elderly, maybe handicapped in some way. I just wondered if there was a requirement for a handicap spot under those conditions. Evidently not. So,
Again, handicap accessibility is covered by the building code rather than our zoning code.
okay.
I was not in attendance at that meeting, so I don't know if it was discussed.
I have this administrative review report, so there's no requirements from the
Okay.
building officials.
All right.
Anything else? Okay, hearing none? Someone want to make a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve this as proposed by staff.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On to item number 3, 6341 Penn Avenue, Mother Duck Learning Center. Consider a request for site plan approval to allow a daycare serving up to 28 children. Staff?
Thank you. This property at 6341 Penn Avenue was previously operated as Mother Duck Learning Center. In 2008, Mother Duck moved to a new location at 6301 Penn Avenue. The owner-operators are now proposing to reopen a satellite operation at the old location, and the building would serve infants and toddlers. A conditional use permit was issued for a daycare at this property in 1993. Conditional use permits, however, expire after 12 months if the use has been discontinued. This property is now zoned mixed-use community, which requires only site plan approval rather than a conditional use permit. All parking requirements are met. In fact, they are exceeded. The applicant has already installed staff-recommended landscaping that meets the intent of the Penn Avenue design guidelines. There is an opportunity to add pervious surface by removing some of the excess parking. However, keeping in mind that potential reuse of the building in the future, it would seem to staff that that would be very short-sighted, considering most uses require significantly more parking than a daycare. In evaluating the site plan, again, the Planning Commission and Council shall consider its compliance with the 7 criteria of the code, which are further outlined in your packet. Staff recommends approval based on compliance with all of the criteria, and once again, notice was published in the Sun Current, sent to all properties within 350 feet, and staff did not receive any comments. And that's our report.
Thank you. Would the applicants wish to speak to us? Nothing. Okay, very good. This is a public hearing. If there's anyone that wishes to come forward at this point, this is your opportunity. Seeing none, I'd ask to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Okay. All in favor, second, thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carries. Okay. Discussion.
Hours of operation.
Please.
I do.
So hello,
Thank you.
I'm Michelle Moyne. We'll operate probably 7 to 5:30.
Okay. And I had heard that it would be only infants? at
And
this lo-
toddlers.
Toddlers,
Mhm.
okay. So you're going to have quite an active play area back there?
Well, not really,
No?
because we'll have 8 infants probably,
Okay.
and, well, just start. Anyway, and then just 14 toddlers, so
Okay.
they're little people.
So they're not going to be out in the back much? You show up a play area. That's
Right,
what I was
we'll have a
asking.
play area, right.
Okay.
They'll probably be out, maybe an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon,
Okay.
depending on the weather.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Seeing none, let's see, I asked for a motion.
I would agree with staff recommended motion, and I would move that we pass that.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Maureen, a second? Okay. Okay, any discussion on that? None, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is to cancel the public hearing related to parking lot design. Staff?
Thank you. Like it says in your staff report, we just like a little additional time to discuss this internally before we come before you with a proposal. It will likely come before you sometime next year.
And we need to make a motion and cancel?
You do need to
Okay.
make a motion to
Okay, so
cancel.
can I have a motion? Okay, second.
Seconded.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Very good. Okay, on to new business. Item number 5 is finding consistency for acquisition of 6400 17th Avenue. Staff.
Thank you. The property at 6400 17th Avenue is a vacant foreclosed property owned by Bank of America. The property is located in the Cedar Point redevelopment area and is zoned MR3, high-density residential. The HRA has had a purchase offer accepted for the property. The HRA plans to purchase the property, demolish or move the existing building, and hold the property until a future date when redevelopment of the area to high-density multiple family housing occurs. The 2008-2018 comprehensive plan identifies this parcel as high-density residential, and the HRA's purchase requires a finding of consistency with the comp plan by the Planning Commission. The purchase of the property is obviously consistent with the 2008 comp plan. That is staff's report. If you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Any questions?
Yes. The purchase of the property by the HRA, does that mean that the property then is, and if I missed it, I'm sorry, designated as affordable housing, affordable with a capital A program type housing?
No, this property is not designated because of the purchase by the HRA.
Okay. So it can be developed by repurchase or purchased from the HRA by a private developer, and any type of or acceptable housing would go in?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none?
Oh, one further one.
Oh, one for
The house is still there. How long would you anticipate it being vacant?
We would anticipate that it would be torn down within the next 2 to 3 months.
Oh,
We
okay.
usually try to wait until we have, 2 or 3 homes, so
Sure.
we can bid them out together and get a better price.
Okay, thank you.
With the staff recommendation.
Okay, been a motion to approve?
Seconded.
Motion and second, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
We know you.
Carries. Thank you.
I thought it really just meant
Okay, item number 6 is finding of consistency for acquisition of 7600 Pillsbury Avenue. Staff.
Thank you. In 2008, Richfield Properties LLC, working with Ron Clark Construction and Design, purchased the property at 7600 Pillsbury Avenue in anticipation of future redevelopment of the block. In 2012, the City Council voted to deny the land use application to redevelop the parcel with a low-income housing tax credit apartment project. Following that denial, Richfield Properties contacted staff expressing an interest in selling the parcel to the HRA. The HRA approved the purchase of the property on November 19th. The property is located adjacent to city and HRA-owned properties in the 7600 block, and the property is guided for medium-high density residential. The HRA's purchase requires a finding of consistency with the comprehensive plan by the Planning Commission, and the HRA and city own all but this and one other parcel on the block. Acquisition of this parcel will further attempts to successfully redevelop the block in the future. Future construction of medium-high density multifamily residential will be consistent with the 2008 comprehensive plan. And that's staff's report.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on that?
Same question on the previous property. Purchase of this property would require what type of housing on the property?
It would not have a specific requirement for affordable or
Okay. This is
non-affordable.
unencumbered, can be resold to a private developer anything can be built.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question for me. I'm just curious why that comes up now, and just usually has been the same all the way along, so I'm just curious.
I'm curious because of the transactions, and they get complicated, and there's sometimes things that, get by everybody, and I like to just have it out there in the public. It's been asked here. It's been clarified.
Okay. I
Somebody
just thought I
has-
was missing something, so
No.
I needed a little clarification.
Just
now.
sometimes I think things need to be publicly aired and put out there.
Okay, very well. Thank you for that
Karen,
clarification.
you had a,
I would just add that sometimes the HRA does purchase the property with community development block grant funds, for example, and those do have affordability requirements tied to the resale
Okay.
and redevelopment, so.
Thank you. Okay, any other questions? Maureen?
Curiosity and anything else, the other two pieces of property on Pillsbury on that west side, I know the one closest to the old garage is still owner occupied. That middle one, what's the status on that one? Does the city own that one, or is that also privately owned? I'm sorry if I cut you.
Yeah, I believe that the HRA does own
The second one.
yeah, and then there is an owner that still owns and
There's only
occupies
one that's
her
owned.
home, and then there's this home, so.
Okay.
Okay, other questions? If not, I'd ask for a motion.
We'll move the recommended action.
seconded.
Okay, a motion and a second. Any discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? Carries. Thank you. And last item on new business is cancel or move December 24th Planning Commission meeting. Staff?
Thank you. The regularly scheduled meeting falls on a city holiday, Monday, December 24th. We have not received any applications, and we recommend just canceling that meeting.
Okay. Any discussion on that?
I'd support having the meeting only if you show up in a red suit and a little
Yeah,
fussy
but I want you to
hat.
explain why you did that. No, I'm sorry. Sure. Okay. Anything else? If not, motion? And,
Seconded.
all in favor, say aye. Aye. Very good. Gee, there was no debate over that one. Good. Okay, old business, no old business. Liaison reports from Community Services.
Community Services, one thing I'd like to mention is that there is a special meeting, hearing, public hearing, the 29th of this month by the Community Services Commission to allow the public to comment on the proposed idea of building a band shell. And I would encourage people to show up and participate.
Where's that at, Tom?
Oh, gosh. You're catching me. I think it's at the community center.
Okay.
Is that correct?
Well, it must be on the
I-
website.
I was going to
It's
say,
on
you
the
can
web-
check the
Yeah.
city calendar on the website, and it will list the
It
location.
is. It slips my mind, but I believe
That's
it's at
okay.
the community center.
okay.
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
Sorry.
Okay.
Can
Maureen?
symphonic band or something like that at 4 o'clock on 58th and Nicollet, I think. It's a church. It's Richfield Lutheran or
Lutheran,
Richfield
Richfield Lutheran
Methodist
Church.
or something like that. And the purpose is to raise funds for the band shell.
Yes.
Thank you. City Council?
I have no report.
Okay, thank you. Housing Redevelopment Authority?
There were some subordination requests, but nothing of note.
Okay, thank you. School Board?
Yeah, the district's budget received a clean, unqualified opinion on their audit report, which is apparently the best rating you can get, and the board accepted it. They approved change orders for baseball field improvements, including the lights, the installation of those lights. And collective bargaining agreements were reached for tentative collective bargaining agreements were reached for grounds and transportation workers, food and nutrition service workers, and paraprofessionals, and the board approved a grant application to the Minnesota State High School League Foundation.
Yeah, very good, thank you. That grant was for the lights, is that what that was for?
The lights, a retaining wall, and then one other project. I can't remember it off the top of my head.
Okay, very good, thank you. Transportation Commission.
Well, it was a busy meeting, and we had representatives from the county out to talk about both Portland and 66th Street. 66th Street from Xerxes to 16th Avenue will be redone. Right now, they're in what they call preliminary layout development. There'll be public involvement in January of 2013. The detailed design will take place in 14, 15, and 16. They hope to let contracts in 16 and start the project in 2016. Then Portland is also in preliminary layout development. That's going to be improved from 67th to 77th. And that one's actually going to start sooner. They hope to have that done in 2015. Then I talked quite a bit about the bicycle advisory group. There's about 35 people interested in the whole idea of a bicycle advisory group. They hope to have about 8 to 10 people with liaisons, non-voting liaisons to the other commissions in Richfield. Their primary role would be education and advocacy.
Thank you. Chamber of Commerce.
The annual planning meeting is coming up in a couple of weeks, as is the holiday party and the transfer of the gavel from the existing chair to the new chair. If you check the Chamber's website, all the details are there.
Okay, thank you. Other, anything else? Yes.
I have a couple comments. One is that I noticed the legals for this particular meeting were in the November 15th issue of the Richfield Sun. The deadline for that is, I believe, the 7th of the month. I just find it unusual, especially for a holiday weekend, to get the information on a Wednesday in the mail when I probably had more time than most folks for looking at that literature, but I think there ought to be a way to get that information to the members of the Planning Commission earlier. I also note that in the Star Tribune Sunday, yesterday, the vacancy rate for 2-bedroom and 3-bedroom apartment units for 2-bedroom plus den is 5.3% vacancy rate. For 3 bedrooms, 4.6% in the what they call the northwest, west, south suburbs category. That's both of those are nearly double what the others are for smaller apartments. So that might be a consideration for the Housing Committee. And I have one more thing to say, if I may. I'm not going to be seeking reappointment to this seat, and I want everyone to know that it's not in any way related to being pilloried by Mr. Vasecki. Thank you.
Ouch. Sorry. Okay. Well, we're sorry to see you go, because we'll miss the humor and your good thoughts. So I wish you good luck.
Thank you.
Maureen, this is your last meeting, and we wanted to.
Wait a minute, I think then I served through January, do I?
Well, yeah, depending on when they bring back board members as such. So it may be your last, let's just put it that way. But anyhow, we want to make sure that we thank you very much for your services if when we have the chance and the opportunity. So I want to make sure we send you off well, because you had 3 nice long terms in this planning commission, did a lot of nice things along the way, so want to make sure that you're recognized for your great service and your help to Richfield as a whole. So thank you very much.
And I'd just like to say, since there is a city council candidate, I hope you can find a woman point in my place. But maybe we go down by
We go down to
attrition
7.
anyway, so I
We go
guess
down to
it's a
7,
moot
but Bob's not coming.
So I guess there
back,
will
so-
be no women on this.
Well, there will be. There will be. Okay, so thank you very much for your service, Maureen. Anything else? Okay, if not, call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. And all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Have a nice holidays if we don't see you. Thanks very much. Okay.